Good afternoon and welcome to Hard Talk with Marsha Walker. And our first guest is already here, so forget all the monologues. Let's get right into it. We have three guests this afternoon. Mr. Mohammed, thank you very much for joining me
A
and being
pleasant
with
good
me.
afternoon and an absolute pleasure to be here. Thank you for having me on.
Okay, guys, so just to get some housekeeping out of the way, you can contact us on 222 Talk. I don't have all the it's normally going across my screen so I can see, but 222 Talk, and of course we're streaming on YouTube, we're on Facebook, and oh, look, it's this. You can WhatsApp us at 318-1021. So join the conversation. It's all about budget, but I think based on the three guests that I've picked, we're not only going to deal with it from, a sort of fiscal measure, finances, that strict, is it a profit and loss account, an accounting statement kind of thing. So we're going to start with, can I call you Issa?
Absolutely.
All right, because this is we would like to say that this is it's a casual conversation, because what is the aim of Hard Talk is to raise the conversation in among citizens. So you don't have to have a PhD in anything. You Each and every citizen, from the ground to the hill, from wherever you sit in Ivory Tower, wherever, we should be able to discuss politics. I think growing up, and even now, people say sports, religion, politics, taboo topics. You don't talk about it, it's divisive. I think that we need to become a mature society where we can have conversation, where we can learn to disagree. You can have a position that is 100% opposite to what I believe in, and we can still discuss it and reason together. And if it comes to it, we can agree to disagree respectfully. If we were to see that kind of debate in Parliament, I think we would have good policies, where persons are mature, they genuinely want the best for the country, and we are able to say, look, I'm coming here with an open mind, a humble heart, and let's discuss and see if we could get the best policy possible. So that's the tone of our show. Good afternoon to Rapid Fire. You will see me stopping in between just to engage with those who are saying good afternoon, etc. So Issa, I first your videos first came on my timeline with transfer pricing video. But we'll get into that later.
Sure.
And then so I liked it. Well, it was on Facebook, but I saw that you had that TikTok. So I went and I checked you out, and I said, well, this guy is he's there. There are more people. I'm always happy when more persons join the conversation. And then, well, I saw the Project 600 kind of going around on WhatsApp, but I hadn't really paid attention. And then your speech again came into on my timeline, and I said, who is this guy? I love. First of all, you were not, you didn't, public speaking is for me my thing, right? I think I always say it's not the best written book, it's the best selling book. So you can have all the information. If you cannot deliver it, crap will smoke your pipe. You did not come here and you weren't like, good morning, everyone. How are you today? These are my points. You knew your information, you were passionate about your information, and you delivered your information. So it was captivating. It was a long video, but I thought to myself, okay, I have to clip a few things. And I thought maybe I could just clip the whole video, just clip it up a few times and every day post something. But 15 minutes did not feel like 15 minutes. As I said, it was really well presented. I said, well done, young man, but I think we're around the same age based on what you had said in your speech. But in politics and stuff, I think that is young.
Still young. Yeah.
So I was elated that you agreed to come on. And then, of course, it was budget week. So I know we will kind of not just talk about, what you are doing in your space, but, you'll get your views on the budget. So tell me about this. I think it was a Citizens Crime Summit. Then I saw Project 600. So tell me about whatever is going on in your space, what it's called, how we can get involved, why, the floor is yours.
You know, this all started with just a conversation between me and my wife over lunch one day in work. You know, we work together, so that's nice. And of course, the crime situation is on top of everybody's minds, right? The thing has saturated the population. I don't even think we realize the kind of anxiety and psychological trauma that our population is going to be dealing with for decades to come over this thing. It's saturated to the point where it's infected every aspect of living in Trinidad and Tobago. And we were just thinking that we need to have a day where everybody could just get together and cry. And honestly, that was it. You know, we should all just go down to the savannah in Port of Spain collectively as a nation and just cry because the situation is horrible. And that's how the Project 600 started. It was just that idea to get people out into the Queen's Park Savannah. You know, we had the March Against Crime last year in December, and we had the 600 flags going around the savannah, and the flags were meant to represent the blood of the nation coming out and that sort of thing. Now, this crime summit is just a natural extension out of that, because since then we sort of entered the realm of social activism. And I'm glad you're speaking about having conversations about politics, because that's exactly what we're in the business of trying to do, which is to sort of rekindle that culture of civic participation that seems to have gone clear out of the country. And people forget that we have a history of this thing. You look at carnival characters like the Midnight Robber and the Piero Grenade. You look at Calypso and the entire institution that is. I mean, talking about politics in our blood, you know, the way we move, the way we talk, the way we manage ourselves. I think conversations about politics is part of Trinidad culture, you know. And I think it's kind of sad that things have become so divisive recently, and things have become so polarized recently that politics itself is getting in the way of politics, if I could put it to you that way. And I thought that people need to reclaim their space in this political conversation. And that's sort of what Project 600 was about, getting people outside of the party politics and the partisan, the left and right, the red and yellow, whatever you call it, outside of that sphere, because not everybody falls in that bracket and not everybody wants to be associated with that bracket, quite frankly. And there needed to be a place for those who are not in that to express how they feel about what they're going on, because at the end of the day, the running of the country is accountable to the citizens of Trinidad and Tobago and no one else. So where can we reclaim that space for citizens of the country to have a say in what is going on? Because quite frankly, as a young person looking at the leaders in this country, there's much to be desired in terms of what I see from the leadership across the board. So we aim to provide that. We
I'm going to
set out
pause you
to
for a little
provide that
bit.
platform. Sorry?
I'm going to pause you. I'm going to pause because otherwise I will then have like 1,000 questions to ask you, follow-up questions, because you've said a lot of different things there that may need to unpack. But so I wrote down a few words: citizen participation. It's in our blood, you know, which of course made me think about Woodford Square. You used the word recently in terms of that division, but I may throw it out to you that is it recent? Because I think it was last week. My dates get mixed up, but I spoke to a previous guest where we spoke about, you know, Eric Williams, and when they lost prior to independence, when the PNM lost, you know, he understood the strategy of dividing. He needed to divide us along the lines of race. You know, let's be truthful about it. I voted PNM before, so it's not that I just saying that because, you know, but that was the strategy. And if you can divide us, then you can conquer us. You know, then and so I would challenge that it's not necessarily a recent thing. Social media may have its part to play in how these private conversations are now very public and everybody's showing all their skeletons proudly. Then you spoke about, you know,
But just on that,
for
it goes back to
those,
colonialism. So I agree with you. It's not recent at all.
Yeah. So then you spoke about a space for persons to have a say. Those who do not, you know, they don't fall into red camp, they don't fall into yellow camp. They may not want to fall into any camp. They do not, they're interested in politics, but they don't want membership in any party. And so I'm going to give you just a little bit of history about myself, because I think that's who I was. I remember being very conscientious. I didn't want to be involved in politics, but that's if that's I essentially, I mean, you cannot open your door and not be involved in politics. And I try to explain that to people all the time. Politics is natural, it's inevitable, it controls everything. So you are involved in politics whether you like it or not. You may mean that you don't want to be involved in, national frontline electoral politics, but we're all
politics, party
involved.
politics.
Yes. Yes. So that's what I try to explain to citizens. We are all involved in politics. Now, what I found, and my guest last week, Kyle Taklal Singh, said, after 16 years of being a lawyer and fighting, all the way to the Privy Council, he realized that he needed to become a policy maker. So he needed to be in Parliament because there are just limits. And I found that was, that was my journey. You fight as an NGO, you fight, you protest, you do this as a citizen, just where you are. I'm not interested, who asks you to serve here and who asks you to serve there. And you say, no, thank you, I'm good. And then I remember in 2015, I thought maybe I could run as an independent candidate because I'm not interested in party politics. But I have reached the stage where I've recognized the need to be inside Parliament and to have a voice in there. People say, well, unless you have real millions of dollars and still millions of dollars to possibly lose, nobody in voting for an independent candidate. So that takes me to this question. A lot to reach to the question, but I wanted the context. Sure. Do you think that our country is ready for independent candidates?
So our country being ready, I think, is not. We are hamstrung by our political system. At the end of the day, we inherited a first past the post system from the British, and that saddled us with a lot of limitations. And it was done intentionally. No, first past the post system is chosen because it's stable. But by what they mean stable, it's limited to two parties because of things like strategic voting, because of split the vote, because your support has to be concentrated in geographical areas for you to have a chance. The system itself defeats independent candidates. And so if we desire independent candidates, and I think independent candidates are good because it creates a competitive political space. Now that competition leads to better outcomes, right? When parties get comfortable with each other, when they get comfortable, me and you, your turn, my turn, or I'm strong and you're weak, you will never get in, so I could do what I want. When that comfort seeps in, they become irresponsible. Or there's a temptation to be irresponsible. I think the competitiveness is a good idea. But if we are to say that we desire that competitive political space where independent candidates have a chance, then I submit to you that there is a prerequisite, which is we need to fix our constitution, as was recommended by numerous constitutional reform committees, starting with the Wooding Commission in 1974. We need proportional representation in this country. And that's the way we get independent politics coming into play. And I do believe it's a good thing to have numerous parties rather than two. I think competition is good. I think it will lead to better outcomes overall for the country. Despite some people may point to instability or things, we are a mature democracy now. I think we have demonstrated that we are a mature democracy and we can manage our affairs fairly well. So I think that fear is that was existing when we were a young independent state is no longer applicable. And I rather tie myself to the position of Wooding, which is we need proportional representation. And that will lead to the ability to have independent politics in the country in a real and meaningful way.
Okay, so I'm going to challenge you again. I believe philosophically, right? It's like a fundamental belief. You can do what you can do, work with what you can control. I don't know that we will see constitutional reform in our lifetime. Just saying. I don't have hopes for it. And so for me, I have to pin my hope on something that I feel is more controllable, right? So that's that. First past the post, I'm going to give you some data and show you why I think even with first past the post, we can have, whether it be a third party, whether it be an independent candidate. I'm going to use Diego Martin West, and the three Diego Martins have the same type of numbers. The non-voter in Diego Martin West, 29,000 voters is your number, right? Your voting pool. Keith Rowley would have gotten 8,000 votes. So you're now looking at 11,000 votes, which is more, and I'm saying 8, but I'm rounding up, right? And this is consistently, right? The non-voter. So what we consider PNM safe seat is really a non-voting seat.
Yes.
The number of votes that PNM over the years, since independence, they don't win with 50% of the votes. Their best year was something like 40-something%. So it means there is a space.
Yes.
There is a space for, and that 50% would not be PNM diehards, right? Let's go to local government now. And, the figures that they won with are really poor. So there is a space for the non-voter to come out, which is what you would have seen in 2007, where PNMs had their same amount of votes, but the non-voter came out and brought, seats like Diego Martin West. I'm not talking marginals here, right? I'm talking because that's a different dynamic. And I challenge, so I speak to Diego Martin West all the time. That's where I would have gone up. And I challenge Diego Martin all the time because I said, you are a unique, and you have 3 Diego Martin seats. I'm sure if I check San Fernando West, it's probably the same because they sort of have that same dynamic. But you have the potential to come out and vote for somebody other than UNC and PNM because you work on the floor, you work on the ground. They're not interested in party politics. They're not interested in party politics. They think, it don't matter who have there, whatever. So these are seats, and all you just need 2-3 people. You don't need, 10 seats. You just need 1 or 2 independent candidates inside of there, or third parties, small parties, whoever. However, but non-PNM, non-UNC. You just need 1 or 2 people in there who can act as that sort of independent senator. And I think that can be achieved without constitutional reform.
So the general rule that third parties don't work in first past the post breaks down in one particular situation, and that is when you have areas of concentrated local interest, right? So an area that is different from the rest of the country. You could have take for example in England with the Scottish party, right? So that Scotland area, they are able to command a lot of political power, even though they're in a first past the post system, because they have a specific local issue. In Trinidad and Tobago, the perfect example is Tobago, actually, where they are able to command a space as a separate entity. And I think after Tobago, Diego Martin is probably the next best example, where it's an area that has a sort of a unique personality in the politics, right? Diego Martin occupies a slightly more special place. So there are areas of the country where you could possibly get that sort of thing working, and I don't discount that. And when I say that, when I said what I said about the independent candidates and so forth, look, that's a general big picture thing. Of course, there could be exceptions, right? And Tobago.
And the only reason I'm speaking specifically like that is because we are approaching a general election, and I do think that the nation needs, for me, I am on a sort of like a political education campaign where, okay, I don't think that we can fight. And I see your hand because and that's for me, I have to pick which battle I'm going to fight. And I don't think that I'm prepared to fight a constitutional reform battle only because, well, somebody has to win with 33 seats, 34 seats. It's 31 seats, 31.75 or whatever is a constitutional majority. So, and I'm not seeing, in fact, I might see PNM doing that more than UNC right now, God help Trinidad and Tobago
Yeah.
if the People's National Movement gets a constitutional majority, because we will see constitutional change, but I guarantee you it's not going to be closer to voting. It's going to be further
It's going to be
away.
further away. They're
It's
going to
going
go
to
executive
ensure,
presidency.
yeah,
Yeah.
it's going to
Mhm.
ensure that they stay in power for the rest of our lives.
So,
So God help Trinidad and Tobago if PNM gets 32 seats, right?
so me
I don't
personally,
see
I think,
UNC.
yeah,
Mhm.
you are doing the right thing, because it's the same mission we set ourselves, which is a sort of a cultural transformation of the population and how they view the politics, right? There's a reason that you said,
Yes.
look, there is a generational thing at play here. Okay. Millennials and under have a different way of looking at politics. And that's why young people traditionally have been disengaged in Trinidad, because there's nothing that interests them or excites them, right? This the re-educate, not, I wouldn't even say re-education, I am saying the re-stimulation of that need to
No,
participate
I would
in
say
civic
it's a
action.
re-education. I would say it's a re-education.
Sure.
It is absolutely a re-education, because
Sure.
so like last week, or whenever, someone said to me, one of my guests said to me that persons think that an independent candidate or a third party, one or two persons inside of Parliament won't make a difference. I said, are you all mad? I said, that is exactly the ones who will make a difference, because if you playing up, you need me.
Yeah, so
That's
long
why,
so long as
that's
they
why
need that for
Manning
the
and Pandey
majority.
would have
Yeah.
changed the constitution.
Yeah.
That's why Manning and Pandey would have changed the constitution to affect persons crossing the floors easily as they do in England.
It's
So
also
someone
why
is
in
asking,
Hyderabad
is the
Accords.
PNM?
Yeah.
Yeah.
The
Someone is
fight, but
asking, is the PNM a bad word?
no.
Someone is asking, is the PNM a bad word? Well, as I said, I mean, it's not a matter of, I don't want to bash PNM or UNC. It's just the data is there after how many years of independence.
Look,
Where are we as a country? And
the
whether we
PNM
like
is
it
a
or not, PNM has been the one to lead us the most.
look, the PNM is a political party, and they will do what political parties do, right? Which is, when you're not in power, get into power, and when you're in power, stay in power. That's what,
Stay.
that at the end of the day is what political parties do. Sometimes people think, well, political parties have to take care of the country and all that stuff. What we need in our system, it's an unfortunate reality that taking care of the country for your traditional political party is a side effect. It's not what they're really there to do. They are there to get into power and to stay in power. And
Yeah.
from that perspective, from that lens, no, PNM is doing damn a hell of a better job than the UNC, if you ask me, through that lens, which is
I'm
what
not
we've been.
hearing you. You broke up there. This
I-
happened last week as well. So you said the PNM is doing a far better job at what?
than the UNC at getting into power and staying in power. In other words, doing
Right.
what a
Yes.
political
They are. They
party
do. I
does.
tell people all the time. Yeah, I tell people
Right?
all the time. PNM knows how to win an election. Give Jack their jacket. They may not know how to govern, but they can win an election.
And that's
And
the point. What you just
yeah,
said there,
but
they,
but
they
but
may not.
that is something that I think the citizens encourage, because again, I will go back to Diego Martin West. I have lived here all my life, and Keith Rowley has been the MP not all my life, but I mean since I could really understand things. How long are you going to have him there before you say enough is enough? I have said to citizens, and I go back to focus on what you can control. So I'm not going to beat the constitutional reform stick, because it didn't happen in my lifetime, if you
Mhm,
ask me.
mhm.
But what I can control is you have one term to fool me. By the second term, you out. And I think if every seat felt that way, then the political parties would understand. You have one term to fool me. They have no PNM safe seat. They have no UNC safe seat. All seats are marginal. If you don't perform, get out.
and
And I
and
think that we, the citizens, need to drive the performance. If you are not taking care of us, we will protest. We are not a protesting nation. I saw somebody here say that citizens are afraid to protest, because of victimization. Maybe it's just a small country. I'm not sure why, but we're not a protesting nation. Maybe we should be. But Sparrow in 1980 something, David Rudder in 1990 something, we've always been complaining, and we've always said we like it so. Sparrow says we like it so because the citizens of Trinidad and Tobago have not stepped up and really demanded change. You know, when we had the Black Power movement, I do not agree with the coup. You know, those are not the ways that you demand change. But we have not. We take it. You know, we have a finance minister that said, "Well, we in riot yet."
But we have a history of it, and this is the
And
point. I agree with you. Right now, it's been almost beaten out of us because so many times we've tried and we've failed, and promises were broken and dreams were shattered. Right? There's been so much disappointment, but we do have a culture of this. The water riots, Butler, Adrian Colarienzi, you mentioned the Black Power movement. There is a cord of this running through us, but we need to find it back. And this is the problem when the electoral politics aren't working in our favor. Now, the way I view it, we're between a rock and a hard place in terms of the electoral politics. So what do we do? And this is the point where the citizens have to come to the front and express their view. It could be outside of the political sphere. We need to advocate for what will benefit us. We need to demand that representation that is owed to us. And we need to rekindle that spirit. And as like you said, the political education, we need the electorate to have a shift in their brain about how they are. And this here in Project 600, we have a phrase we use: citizen sovereignty and government accountability. Citizen sovereignty, government accountability. We have to remember that we are the owners and the custodians of our own democracy. And this is the platform that Project 600 aims to provide, something outside the political sphere, outside of that, hopefully outside of that fear of victimization, where if you believe in what is right for the country and you're concerned about these things, and somebody needs to champion the cause, and if your elected representatives are not championing the cause, then we need to band together and we need to champion that cause ourselves, because the only thing a political party is afraid of at the end of the day is people in the streets.
Yeah. I sometimes I do feel I wish because I went up as a UNC candidate, you know, so now it's kind of like you're branded. Well, although now I've spoken out against the political leader of UNC, so now I'm branded as PNM. You know, so there's always, I guess there's that propaganda, and at some point somebody's going to brand you as something anyway, as somebody undercover anyway. So I guess we do what we have to do regardless. Please don't leave, because I think that you are going to, if you have the time, work really well with the next guest that is already there, Chris. Chris, are you here? I think I maybe need to leave you all for a little bit and switch devices, because last week I was struggling to hear my guest, and it's happening again now. And I'm wondering if it's really me, because then when I played back last week on the YouTube and the Facebooks and stuff, everybody was hearing, so I could ask the audience if they're hearing well. But last week I was struggling. So I'm seeing you all frozen. I'm hearing Chris trying to talk. So I don't know if maybe I should leave you all in to have a conversation and I switch devices, because this happened to me last week and my entire interview sort of collapsed because I'm just like, very lame. Chris, you want to talk? Let me see.
Yeah,
you're frozen, Chris.
Are you hearing me?
Well, I'm not. Issa, are you hearing him?
I am hearing him quite well, actually.
So my goodness. So it's my device. And someone is saying I can hear you and I'm in the US. So it is my device. And so let me see. I'm gonna leave y'all to talk for a little bit, because then I may actually have to come off the call and switch devices. But Chris, I think you were there. Do you know Issa? I mean, y'all are so similar.
No, I'm
having a conversation with Issa that I know that I would have with Chris.
Yeah, I think I've seen him on social media. I think he had a few videos that went viral on social media. So I'm familiar with, I guess, some of the ideals that you hold.
Well, okay, so Chris knows me from social media. That's nice to know that I have a presence on social media. But so I'm gonna talk to Chris, right? So I have I don't know you, but Marsha is struggling because she can't hear you. So I'm gonna
Right.
ask you to please introduce yourself because Marsha can't, otherwise she would be able to. So
I'm
to
picking
please
up enough.
introduce yourself.
I'm picking up enough.
Um,
I'm picking up enough to know that Isa has taken over and he's now interviewing us, which is fabulous.
yeah. Well,
Chris, go ahead.
This is just fabulous. I'm loving it. Maybe
I
I'll
love
just stay
this.
with my bad internet and listen on as you take over.
So first of
So,
all, I want to
Ethan,
thank
I'm just
you.
going to leave you with this, right? Chris just came from Parliament. Chris big in the dance. He is like a youth parliamentarian or regional youth parliamentarian. And so they just had a post budget something. But Chris, don't get into budget. Resist the urge to get into the budget because Chris, just like you and I, we believe that we need a re-education. So we are on a campaign of political education. We both want to see the conversation change. We both want to see young people get involved because we think that that is where that independent space that, they're not tied, the navel string and tied to any party. Um, so yeah, so Chris was so happy with me when I spoke out, and he was like, "That's the Marsha that the young people know," because he was very worried in terms of like, oh gosh, is she just gonna be like one of those politicians that just sit down there? She reached in Parliament now, and so she just had a Tory line. So he was so happy. He was like, "Yes, she's speaking out. She's not afraid," you know. So Chris has, I guess, that same, we think politics the same way. So I'm going to stay quiet because if y'all reply, I can't hear anymore. But I'm trying to message to look for the iPad so I don't actually get up. But I'm going to leave y'all now. Bye, I promise.
Yeah, so well, first of all, I want to thank Marsha for having me on. I know that we are live, and so we have a listening audience right now, and I assume some of them probably in traffic on their way home. But for some of you all who would not be familiar with me, I would have dedicated much of my student life to youth advocacy from high school, being involved in RBC Young Leaders, to whilst at university being involved in youth parliament. I represented the country for regional youth parliament. I served on the student guild. My background actually is in engineering. I studied process and chemical engineering, but I think my passion has always been on or in being a problem solver. And so always growing up, I've noticed there were always issues or problems to be solved, and I enjoyed that. Maybe that is why I decided to do engineering. But similarly, in the country, there are problems, and I think as young as I may be, I can identify a number of areas in which we can improve on, especially not just with the human resource, but the talents that we have. I'm trying to stay away from the budget until Marsha
Mm,
returns. But
mm,
that's just a bit about me. I'm a citizen who wants to see Trinidad and Tobago do better. And let me
mm,
just say this because I know that there are a number of listeners that will be listening. We get to a space where we always are like, well, the independent voices are the ones we want to hear around the budget time, and we don't really want to hear no, I want to hear the persons interested in the partisan politics. And the reason I want to hear the persons interested in partisan politics as well is because there would have been pull factors. So just today I had a conversation with someone, and they asked what were my views on the youth population joining political parties, and I'm like, I think they should join. I think the more young people we have interested in partisan politics, because you see, regardless of what we may think, that's the system we inherited. Yes.
mm,
And so that's the vehicle in which you get into government. And so, really, how I look at an election is that you have a contest with the best ideas. Yeah. And sometimes it can be a contest. And unfortunately, it can be reduced not to ideas, but who could smear who better. And that's a very toxic place to be in because it's counterproductive um, to us as a society. So I always tell young persons and anyone, join a political party and be the change that you wish to see there. Take up space, and that's how we would get the Trinidad and Tobago that we want to see. We have to be willing, and there's a willingness, as much as we get on here. I think this is about my third interview for the week on the budget. And as much as we carry a message and we give an opinion, it is also important for us to go beyond that and to take up the real space and really do the tangible that is needed for.
So, Chris, I hear you. Full disclosure, I'm an engineer as well, electrical and computer engineering out of UAE, right? So engineers, right? Yeah, engineers.
Yeah.
What I wanted to ask you, I mean, I hear what you're saying, and I hear the drive and the angle that you're looking at. My question is this: in your experience, because you've been involved in the youth politics, you've been involved in youth parliament, etc., the guild and all those things. There's a perception, and I'm not sure, we may have data to back up the perception, it may actually be fact, that there's disengagement among youth in politics in Trinidad and Tobago, right?
Yes.
So I think we could take that as a given. Now, what I want to know, in your experience as a young person coming through the system and sort of going against the grain by immersing yourself in the politics, what do you think accounts for that aversion of youth in politics today in Trinidad and Tobago?
So first of all, let me say that young people, and I meet and I greet with different groups and spheres of young persons, from sporting clubs to the youth parliamentarians to the guild. So I meet with a diverse, because when we speak about youth, we tend to think of, well, all they like is to, I heard a political scientist speak about us and say we always in with phone and this and that, and in a stereotypical way. But we're a very diverse group, and so we have diverse interests. But I'll tell you, a number of young persons are interested in leadership. A number of young persons are interested in bringing a POV to the table, but there's a hesitance. And the hesitance is because of the climate. And I think it is by design. I think the space is created in such a way that it is to ostracize the productive youth. And I have to mention the most recent example. We would have seen there's a possibility an internal election within one of the major parties in Trinidad. And we saw a group of persons, well, one team versus the other. One ran on policy and plan, the other team ran on who is a better loyalist. And it wasn't a matter of loyalist to the vision or the ideology of the party. It was to one person. And that kind of toxicity is something that we are not interested in. When we see it and we identify it, it is not something, it is counterproductive. It goes against, in my view, it's anti-democracy, because how can you have someone who is not on the ticket, campaigning against persons who are running actually on the ticket, and your office is supposed to be in a way independent because your constitution is made up in that way. And so when we see you do those things internally, the trust factor is very difficult for us to buy into. I'll tell you another example, Isa. When we look on social media and we hear the things that you say, when you speak about other Trinbagonians, in very divisive ways, utilizing race as not something that my generation is interested in. When you utilize religion to try to maybe get a particular group in because you're recognizing that you're losing your base, and I say base with quotations. When you recognize that maybe it's an easier target if you go to, in your messaging, capture one group of youth only, and you think that in that message that group will respond, they might enjoy the little kicks, but they will laugh at you and not come and vote for you.
So then, if that's the case, and I'm glad you're laying it out, right? These are the things that the youth are really put off by. Yet these very things define our current political space, right?
And that's why we need to take up space.
So
that's
then
why we need more of us in there. You see, the more of us, we had to outnumber them, because they are outnumbering us. They are outnumbering us, and that is why we cannot stop. So every platform we have, every space we have, we must carry our messages about nation building and not about pulling down other persons. And that's basically why the younger population is disenchanted. As a matter of fact, it's politics in this country has been reduced to who could call each other worse names and go viral. That's what it has reduced to now.
Mhm.
I've I looked at the last Standing Finance Committee last year, and I saw an MP specifically wait for a line minister to speak about doubles. To speak about,
No,
I was looking for the question, I was looking for the substance. I am there with the yellow book, and I'm like, well, this is a line item, and I couldn't find the relevance. But
so
but but they understand TikTok.
so then how I would have looked at this traditionally is that we have a generational gap in values, right? That we have a certain shared set of values. And I say young people, I'm going to talk about millennials and under, and I'm submitting that they share a certain set of values that is not shared by the previous generation, right? In general, of course, there are always exceptions, right? if
Mhm.
if we are to submit it, what you're saying is right, that they care about doing politics a certain way and we care about doing politics a different way. And I'm going to take you to Marsha's question that she asked me in the beginning, which is then
Are y'all
do
seeing me
we
by chance? Am I
I'm
back on?
Yeah.
seeing you. You're
Yes.
there.
I
There
know
you
my
go.
head is kind of cut off because I had to go and
Welcome back.
borrow. Yeah,
Welcome back, Marsha. Welcome back
but I'm
to
enjoying. So
your
y'all go
show.
on.
Welcome back to your show.
I'll get to you. I'll get to you. I'll get to you. Hold on. Yeah. But let me let me finish this point, which is, so then is there a necessity for an independent voice in politics, a sort of a third way? Or is it that, do you think that young people could attach themselves to entities that are in conflict with their values? This is, you see, this now for me is where it becomes tricky, right? Can you attach yourself to an entity that is opposed to your values in the hope that eventually that entity will change? Or is it that we need an independent or a third or a different voice in the politics?
So I've looked and I've listened, and I see where you're going with the question. So we sometimes think it's either red, yellow, independent. We can think it's three options. I don't think of it like three options. I think of it in a way of, let's be substance and let's have substance and let's be productive. And that can exist in red, it can exist in yellow, it could also exist in the independence. What we have right now is a few voices that hold office. And I said this earlier on today, that we are at a critical point in our country. We're transitioning. We are transitioning in terms of the labor force and how AI is going to affect and impact the labor force, what an 8 to 4 or hybrid system looks like. We are transitioning from fossil fuels to renewables. It's happening now, but it's transitioning. We are transitioning in terms of leadership and who want to hold on, right? For whatever, I don't know why, we are also transitioning in terms of leadership. And if Trinidad and Tobago has not recognized it as yet, the change, I heard a very interesting person say, change can come in an easy way or in a storm, but it coming. And I think we are in that transitionary period right now. So the leaders who wish to, and we saw it with Biden. You look right across the pond, and the Democratic Party, and I know there's a number of talks behind the scenes about the Speaker of the House, Nancy Pelosi, and if it is she pressured and a number of other persons pressured Biden to step down. Whether they did or not, the polls suggested that the opponent could have beat him. I mean, we looked at the debate and we looked at his performance in the debate. When you look at the change in the leadership, they did very quickly changed the candidate, the presidential candidate.
Good.
Money was raised in a matter of hours. You're looking at polls shifting. You're looking at the marginal seats being shifted closer. I mean, a few nights ago, that was an interesting debate that may throw some other factors into the conversation now. But my point is, you are at a place now where millennials are in their mid age. Then you have Gen Z. Gen Z, I'm in my 20s, right? I can vote, you know? And
Mm,
so we're at a space and a place where we want to hear something of substance and productivity, and we know the answers, you know. It's
mm.
not like we need anybody to come down and advise us. I mean, spend out millions of dollars and contract people to come and tell us what we need to do for us, you know. We know what we need to do, you know. It's going to take political will, and it's going to take a cultural shift.
Political will and cultural shift, and that brought us straight back. Now, let me bring in my other guest, Marsha. Marsha is a talk show host. She's a former. Yeah, okay. Marsha, I think you're ready to
I
take
am
back your show
loving
now.
it. I am loving it. I am loving it. This is like the bomb. Y'all are the bomb. So okay, so wait, hold up. Wait. I actually do have a contribution now. I do, because I take notes. I take notes when you're speaking and stuff. So Chris spoke about and he threw something else into the space where are we looking at red? Are we looking at yellow? And those things can exist. And I'm not sure. So Issa, I feel like you're proving that you part of the problem to where, by the way, because you see yellow, you see red, and maybe do you feel, because that is what I get from the ground. Persons are not prepared to see that inside of red there's some good. I don't know if they have, but there may be some good. Inside of yellow,
Yes.
there may be some good. Well, let me tell you why I would disagree. Because I have said anybody in this climate who's not speaking up can't be good. I'm sorry. In this climate, if you are willing to sit and draw a salary inside of the parliament in this climate and not speak up, I have to look at you differently. And I will call names: Amory Brown, Penelope Beckles. Those two, I thought for sure they would have been decent human beings. They would have been politicians who would be willing to stand against the status quo. And thus far, they have not spoken up. And I'm very disappointed.
But
There is
Marsha,
no
you know,
way
the
that you
same
can
can be
sit
said.
under Keith Rowley and not speak up.
But
Just like I think there is no way you could sit under UNC and not speak up. Hey, don't interrupt him. I give all the time to talk. Right?
no, because that's what I'm gonna say. There are persons who sit silently down in the UNC and they say
Right.
nothing,
And
and
so
it's in a
and
blind
so
eye.
and so and so you and those who have listen, so I put a name the other day on Facebook and somebody jumped in saying, he's a real nice guy. And I had to say, I'm gonna tell you something. Anybody in this political climate who refuse to speak up, you've lost my respect. I'm very sorry. In this political climate, I refuse to draw a salary from under Keith Rowley and under Kamala Prasad-Bissessar,
Well,
which is why I resigned and I said I will not be drawing any salary and I will not put my nomination in under this political leader because I cannot toe that party line. So let
here's
me answer. Let me finish this part with Issa now, with where Chris is saying inside of political parties, inside of Hope, NTA, or all independent, there exist individual persons that I think we can vote for. So, for example, I may have needed to run under UNC or NTA or Hope or whatever or whoever, right? And my on the ground, I said to Diego Martin West, you are not voting for Kamala Prasad-Bissessar. Your choice is
Did you really
Keith
said that?
Rowley. Huh?
Marsha, you really said that in 2020?
But I said it in public. And let me tell you what else I said in public. And but they knew. The UNC knew. The
That's why it
UNC
wasn't
knew.
wearing yellow.
I said it. No, I was wearing yellow. I said, your choice is Marsha Walker or Keith Rowley. That's what's on your ballot. What Kamala have to do with anything in Diego Martin? Let Saparia handle Kamala. If Diego Martin voted differently, we may have had a different prime minister inside of PNM, and who knows, maybe PNM would not have been so bad. Maybe the government would not have been so bad. And that's why I believe that we should deal with it on an individual basis. Anita Haynes says it all the time. Let's build each community and it will build out into a country. So each individual needs to get involved in their constituency. See who are the candidates on your ballot. Because if Keith Rowley could not be an MP, he could not be a prime minister. So we need to ensure that the MPs, the first step is to place 41 good MPs inside of Parliament. And that starts with us. Look at your ballot paper, take the time, have your questions, and ask it. Let me tell you, and I've said it again publicly, you see Michaela, she's not doing enough media. I need somebody. I was on every station, every radio, everything. Ask me any hard question because that's what you need. I need to know who you are. If you are prepared to go into public life, I need to know what your values are. I need to know what you're prepared to do. And I remember saying publicly, if I can't constantly toe the party line, because that is a system that we inherited, you have to toe the party line or face party, you know, the party could kick you out and whatever, right? And that's inside of Parliament. That's specifically in terms of voting. If a bill came to me and I really could not vote in the way that the whip said, I would be prepared to cross the floor. I would be prepared to deal with it at that level if things got so bad. So, for example, that's where I think PNM MPs need to be right now. Things real bad. You need to speak out. You need to vote against certain things. And you need to be prepared to sit in the middle and say, kick me out if you have to, invoke whatever unconstitutional, whatever you need to invoke, figure it out. So I think we need the young people to get involved in electoral politics. And you only need 41. You only need 41 good persons. And the rest of the citizenry, the rest of the young people need to get involved to know enough and to care enough about who that individual representative is. So whether it be independent, and if it is that you say, listen, I could give you an example of Amory Brown. I can maybe give you an example of what might happen in Mayaru. But I remember Diego Martin Central wanted Amory Brown. They did not want Daryl Smith. They had a right to raise the funds and to get behind Amory Brown and say, listen, we will put you in power. I tell people, I said, don't ask me in putting my name under Diego Martin West until all you could show me 12,000 names and numbers who ready to bring their money, ready to bring their vote. Don't ask me. And so we have to get involved in that sort of proactive way where we place our candidates there. And we demand from beforehand, because we have an election coming up, we need to agitate from now so that we are assured, we know we must be involved more than just voting on the day. We have to ensure that we place good candidates so that we have good options, so that we have 41 good people inside of Parliament. We start there. The Prime Minister will fall into place. The government will fall into place. It will fall into place. But we need to sort of build out.
Well, Marsha, that starts by figuring out who is that we, right? Who is that we?
Well, we have three here right now. And you had a room full of some. Sure, I know Chris had some people.
Sure, but the existing political construct is based on division. That was inherited from colonialism. So I'm not even going to go into Eric Williams. We inherited that, fine. But it's based on division.
I can't see my comment. Let me just say to my audience that I'm on a phone now and I have no idea. See, it's half my head cut off. I can't even figure out. So I'm going to message while you speak. So I'm listening to you, but I'm messaging my studio to find out if somehow I could turn back on the laptop and look at the comments, because I feel very badly that I'm sure the messages are coming through and I cannot respond to my audience. So I'm saying to my audience, I love y'all, but I can't see y'all commenting. I'm having a meltdown with my technology. Issa, back over to you.
There are lots of comments on the comments board.
I know, you see? Oh my God.
That we has to be we the people, right? That is that we the people. The we the people right now in Trinidad and Tobago is split straight down the middle. And it's very hard. There are people who are entrenched and encamped on both sides. And my experience on the ground has told me that even culturally, we are separated. In the issue of crime, we do not see each other's pains. There are different communities in Trinidad that understand and feel about crime in different ways. And people don't realize that. Everybody thinks everybody feels how they feel. That's not true. We're not seeing each other as a people. And unless there's some force that is working towards recreating we the people, We cannot go ahead on a system that's based on ethnic division. We will never get good outcomes for the country if the only thing a party has to offer is the texture of my hair. Because then voting will never be about the issues, it will never be about the economics, it will never be about the policies, it will simply be about who is my people and who is their people. We need to get beyond that. Now, can you get beyond that from within the existing political structure? Maybe it's possible, and maybe it'll take time, and it's worth the effort. So I applaud Chris and what you're doing, and the entire message that you're bringing here, which is get onto the inside and influence and change for better. And while I applaud that, there must be someone calling for something to bring people together on the outside, because it's a monumental task to bring them together on the inside. And while you guys are out there championing the causes on the inside, I am here saying, for those of us who believe we need to come together as a people and not split into camps, there has to be somewhere that you could go to get your voice be heard, because you're going to get drowned out on the inside on either side. I mean, eventually when Chris and his crew break through, you will have a voice, but we have a good few years before we get there. At least I think so, Chris. You might be able to get it done faster, and Godspeed to you, and I would love if you do. We need somebody
and I would say to
calling
you,
for unity on the outside. And
I
this
would
is
say to you that that is what I thought in 2015. I thought that I was going to stay on the outside and do it in the same way that you were doing it. And I did actually think that it would have been faster and easier to break. I would say, though, that's UNC, yeah? That's not PNM. PNM is a well-oiled cult. You ain't changing that, you ain't breaking that. But I do think UNC has, which is why, which is why our base isn't as strong as a PNM base. Because UNC, I say I'm not voting for UNC in 2025 under the current system. And that happens in UNC. So I think UNC still has a foundation that you could shake a little bit. It was built on trade unions. It was built on fights. It's not built on what the Balize house will look like. So so I think that you can break through, but I do agree that both are needed. I think that we should be chipping away at that mountain from all sides. So there's also this space, because I was having a conversation just this weekend with my pastor, actually, and I said, I think that it's a unique space that we have, whichever generation, but this generation, in terms of information, in terms of TikTok, social media, we don't depend on TTT, and we don't depend on one newspaper to get the information across. We can carve out a space, and we can really educate the population. We can fight for change. We can help them, that re-education. We talk about voting a different way, seeing politics a different way. So, championing causes in a different way. I think we have an opportunity that generations before us did not have. Back over to you, Issa.
I absolutely agree that we have an opportunity, and to me, we need not only to recognize the opportunity, we need to find the belief within ourselves to reach for it. I think out of it, we have the chance for a better society and a better Trinidad and Tobago. And now I'm not even speaking about politics and where the politics could go. I'm talking about, what do we want for our kids? What do we want for our future? Me, I'm at the point I have 3 boys. And I have to look at this world that we are going to leave for them. They're going to inherit this from us. And we're not going to be the ones, I'm not going to be the ones to live with the consequences 15, 20 down the years. They're the ones who are going to live with the consequences of our actions, right? They're the ones who are going to have to pay for our sins. And that's the hardest thing about it, because I love my kids. And I am motivated. So I've said this before. People ask me why I'm doing this. Because one day my grandkids, God willing, that God bless me with a life, one day my grandkids are going to look at me and ask me, when Trinidad was going through this mess, what did you guys do? What were you guys doing? And I need to have an answer to that question for my unborn grandkids. I need to be able to answer that question. What were we doing? I can't sit by and sit idly while the country slips down. And all I am doing is hoping and praying that there are other people out there that feel the same way, that the country is going in a bad place, but it's not yet so far gone that we don't have agency to grip it back with our hands and pull the thing forward. We do have that power, and we need to find back that power within ourselves. And I'm finished with the weight to think that somebody else is going to come and solve these problems, because nobody's coming here to fix this. There's no hero rising out of these ashes that is going to step forward and magically wave a wand and fix the problem we have with youth killing each other in the ghettos. That's not going to solve overnight. There's nobody coming to rescue us. And the persons who are there right now are, quite frankly, interested in their own things, and they don't care about what I care about. And what I care about is that country that I'm leaving to my kids. So where does that leave us? It leaves me begging and hoping and pleading that there are people around me to the left and right that feel something similar to what I am feeling. Because only if we have empathy, that shared feeling, understanding each other, only empathy could overcome apathy. We need to understand each other. We need to feel each other. We need to share. And this is what Project 600 about. When we went to the savannah, it was to sit down and cry. And that's how I started the interview, Marsha. It was to sit down and cry together. We need to share what we're going through with each other and find commonality. And it's through the commonality that we may be able to sit down and say, you know what, we really need to break from historic patterns and do something different. And if we put enough pressure where it needs to be put, maybe those who think that they're enshrined in positions of power forever will recognize that, like the emperor, they have no clothes and their ineptitude is dangling for everybody to see, and maybe find it within themselves to step down lest they be overcome with sheer shame. I think some of our people are a bit too shameless in this country.
Chris, doesn't he make you, like, he leaves you feeling all fired up to go? He has a kind of passion when he speaks that he leaves you feeling like, okay, guys, come on, let's go.
Let's do
Colin,
it.
So you're speaking, and Colin actually said online, because I found a way. So my laptop is on back in the backstage. So I'm reading the comments now that people don't care anymore.
No, I am going to push back on that, and I've consistently pushed back on that every time it's been raised in every interview I've done. Absolutely. Do you not care, Marsha? Do you not care, Chris?
I care.
Let me ask you something. Have you ever met people when you ask them, what about you? Do you not care? Have you met anybody say, yeah, me, I don't care?
Is it care, or is it that persons are tired?
This is it. Thank you. Everybody cares, but the passion has been beaten out of us by a system that is brutal and intolerant of anybody who raises their head up. Marsha, you know better than anybody how the character assassination machinery works, and that is their weapon. It's character assassination, and no good deed goes unpunished in this country. And for those of us who've been in the field and have tried, we know that. We know how the machinery comes crashing down on you when anybody tries to say anything positive in this country. People have it beaten out of them. I think people care, and they care deeply. I think people are frustrated. I think people have lost belief that they could do anything about it, or there's anybody out there that could do anything about it. People care. And I'm betting everything that citizens of Trinidad and Tobago care deeply. When Jamal Modis was playing football in African grounds and got shot by a stray bullet and died for daring to play football, where Andrea Lalland, for daring to report that somebody raped her, had an assassination made on her. So can you imagine somebody left their house one morning with a job to kill a 16-year-old girl? Don't tell me that people don't care.
So Chris is saying that we're tired. How do we find the energy? And now listen, this conversation is going real sweeter, but we were supposed to talk budget, and I invite Chris to talk budget, and we have an economist coming. So I mean, she will talk budget. So I want to be, but I want to be fair to Chris because I know that he prepared to talk budget. But Chris, I also feel this is where you like to talk too. So but so the last bit on this topic, because the budget will sort of take us back to here all the time with these three people that we have on the screen right now. What do you think? Because Chris is saying, I think they care, but they're tired and beaten into submission. So you're tired, you're beaten into submission. I mean, I say to people, you said it, I know it best. I will tell people after general election 2020, my husband could not get on a site. He could not. I mean, 25 years of buildings, solid buildings. His portfolio, we could drive through South and every HGC house and every stadium and every this and every that. He could say, I was part of that. You go down in the West and you check 5 islands. I was part of that. And we couldn't eat. People said, if even your face, because you say, well, listen, I have no ego. It didn't have to be under my name. I go be a subcontractor. I go be a foreman. You know who's your wife? And we had to persist past the victimization of me going up against Keith Rowley. And I remember, we would get small jobs now. And then, well, okay, I got a small work in the opposition. And I had to come and say, I said, but they'll fire me if I speak up. So whatever secure income that we're getting now after struggling, we'll lose it. And he said, God will provide. Do what you have to do. Because you had to live with yourself when you finish. You had to live with yourself.
You know what the most common response I got from my close friends and family when I did the march and then we did the summit and the video went viral. You know the most common response was, you need to be careful. You need to get protection. You need to watch your back. The most common response is that you need to be careful what you're saying. You need to be careful what you're doing. Get security, beef up everything, because people know it is not easy out here. It is a difficult thing. Look at me? I'm just calling.
I've had a friend ask me, are you so you're ready for the porn video it didn't create to come out? Because we know that's the game. That's the game. They're going to create a life for you that and say it's a lie said enough is what it becomes truth. And
then everybody, the first thing they say is, boy, you real brave, boy. And all I could think to myself is, what is wrong with our country that me for saying that we should be safe, that our leaders should lead? Because that's what I've said, All I've said is that our leaders need to lead. That is it. That was my message. Leaders, lead. Not that I could do it better. I would never. That I could do it better, or this one could do it better, or you should go and put that one instead, or do what I say to do. I just say, you're a leader. Your job is to lead. You need to lead. And imagine for saying that, everybody to a point is telling me, boy, you're real brave. That tells me so much about this culture that we have inculcated in this country. Look at poor Christmas list.
So what's he said? So what's the solution? Right. And so you have persons like Chris who they're paying for it, right? So what's the solution? Chris now, what's the solution? That we keep doing it and hopefully inspire more and more?
So I think there's a fundamental issue we have as a society, and if you look at most movements throughout the world, historically, it has come down to one thing, being organization. And I think to be able to, and that's what political parties do, they organize a group of persons and they say, this is our vision, this is what we stand by, this is our ideals, this is how we're going to win. And there's the sense of organization there. in an organized way of, I guess, fighting for what you want. I gave the example of one of the major political parties holding an internal election, and we saw what happened then. As a matter of fact, we saw what happened in the parliament. They always put them outside, right? If they're gonna put them outside, they're gonna put them outside, right? We don't see them on the pavement, right? But so we need to continue wherever every opportunity we are given. And if the opportunity is not given to you, you create the space. And we continue. So, I hear person say, we need to be at the table. My thing is, I bring in the table and the clothes. I bring in my own table, I bring in my own clothes, I go and set up here and I sit them right here. This is my table, and we need to continue our message. And we will have varying messages. I've met a number of young people who have diverse messages. I've met young persons who want reform within their political party. They say, you know what? The country can do with some improvement, it's leadership. And within their political party, they want reform. And so they're fighting for reform within that political party. And well, we also saw another example with the internal election earlier this year. And so I think we need to continue our conversations. We need to be a bit more organized. We need to be productive as well. I think social media allows us the platform, and we need to be way more productive. I mean, I scroll through social media and I see the kind of conversations we engage in. I feel that's like a WhatsApp group, a private chat, a voice note with your friend. That is not to be circulated on social media. I mean, when we get to an unhealthy space of, again, name calling, making up stories, misogyny, I see the misogyny, I've seen the level of misogyny. And then not just misogyny, playing victim. Oh my gosh. I'm frustrated. But the question, Isa, you asked me earlier on, young people not interested in that kind of foolishness, and that's why we don't vote. That's why we don't vote. We stay home and we laugh at the rest of you all.
Mm.
because yeah, we will laugh at you all. But we are at a critical point in this country, because right now we are at the cusp. Should I say we are at the cusp? We are at the cusp of a general election. The Minister of Finance read his 10th budget. Some people call it an election budget. Some people they don't know what to call it. They call it the 10th budget, the 5-hour, 10-minute budget.
The
And
long budget speech.
yeah, is that the longest one in the country?
Yes, it was. Long budget speech, small budget.
One of the longest. I've heard that Williams used to give like marathon 6-hour budgets too, but that's before my time. So
And it's so crazy because then you have Canada, Australia, UK. These are massive economies that give 46-minute speeches. So, Chris, before Dr. Sijuan joins us, you were at a post-budget
Budget
in
to talk.
Parliament. Okay, so tell me about it. So let's speak for the youth through you. You were there. You moderated, yes?
I did. So what I noticed with young persons, and I want to say that the Parliament did an excellent job. So I want to congratulate the Office of the Parliament, because they were able to engage the young persons in something that can be a very lengthy discussion and a difficult one to have. They would have invited high school students, and of course also tertiary level students, and then other young people from a number of NGOs and youth organizations. And some of the topics that the young persons, or some of the points, and I'm going to try to just go through very quickly some of the things in my head. What I heard was AI and its impact on the labor force. How are we going to utilize AI in our society? They spoke about their concerns, because of course, as we have a conversation about AI, there are areas in Trinidad and Tobago that doesn't even have proper connectivity and internet services. So we spoke about, well, we can walk and chew gum, we don't need to pick one, but we need to just get it done. We also discussed renewable energy and how that is a transition, and the type of feasibility that comes with that. And I know there is a number of projects going on the Ministry of Planning and Utilities, so we're looking at ramping up, hopefully. We also spoke about the cultural shift, and that's actually one of the bigger topics that we discussed actually today, which would have been as much as we discuss, because budget can get to a space of figures and GDP and well, deficit, and it's 5.5, and what was the theme, and this and that and the next. But really, the budget should be able to point us in that we should have an idea. Okay, so that's where we're going. That's the area in which we see Trinidad and Tobago. And the theme for this year would have been steadfast and resolute, forging pathways to prosperity. See, about forging pathways, I am looking forward, and I don't want to be overly critical. And here's why I'm not going to be overly critical. And that's why I don't want to say I'm against post-budget conversations. I'm against the space in which we have the area in the chronological time where we have it. What I mean by that is Minister of Finance will read the budget. He read it on Monday. The opposition leader is responding tomorrow. The budget continues. So you're going to hear from the line ministers. And so my concern about AI could be brought up by the Labour Minister. My concerns about renewable energy could be also brought up by several ministers. My concerns about youth development can be brought. So I think I don't want to say it's a bit what is the word I'm looking for here? Like it's
Premature.
yeah,
It's premature.
premature. Yeah, I don't want to say
And
it's a
you're
bit.
right, because I also thought to myself, maybe I should hold my budget conversations for next Thursday, because I was going through, so I'm going through this, from Ernst and Young, right? And there are questions that I have, and I'm thinking to myself, but asking an economist now at this point in time,
At
or
this point,
saying that I would like to have gotten this detail, then all they have to do is say, yeah, I just needed to wait. I would give you the detail in my presentation.
and when we speak, and I've heard politicians. This is why, and I want to caution, and I've said this. I said this on Freedom earlier this week, and I want to again caution our politicians and leaders. We have an election coming up. We need you to at least, at minimum, be responsible with your rhetoric. I hear a lot about accountability, transparency, and all of these issues. There's a built-in mechanism for that, and as a standing finance committee. So you want to build trust with young persons, you want to build buy-in, and then everybody, and now we have this, it's creating a psyche that all of them does allegedly thief, right? But there's a space and a place in which we can probe. And so after the debate in the lower house, it goes to the Standing Finance Committee, we go through the yellow books, right? And there are several documents that comes with the budget. Marsha, you know this, you in the Senate. When you
Yes.
then it goes to the
I
Senate.
have helped prepare the budget response several times.
So then it goes to the Senate. And then in the Senate, some ministers that did not speak, maybe in the lower house, because it's 41 of them, some ministers may speak in the other place. And then you have the opposition bench, but you also have the independent. So the budget is a lengthy process. So to give an opinion now, what I can say is that I'm looking forward to hearing from the Minister of Agriculture. Let me say, first of all, the Ministry of Youth Development identified a gap. They identified a gap, and I want to commend them for this, because they identified a gap that existed with young people and our culture. That agriculture would not have been something that we were looking towards as a business opportunity, and and a longevity as a career and that kind of thing. And they were able to introduce the homestead project, and I think it's visionary because it's shifting the culture. And I think the impact of that project, once we continue to invest in it, we will see it in the future. My problem is, so good job, Ministry of Youth and National Development. Good job, great, yay, congrats. But I want to hear from the Minister of Agriculture what is going to be done for farmers today. Not the youth that are going to be farmers in the future. No, the farmers right now speaking about access to loans, land tenure, and all of these other issues surrounding agriculture. And so I'm looking forward to hearing the solutions for that, because you have a fiscal allocation to deal with it. I'm looking at also reform in certain areas, educational reform, or at least some sort of intro to reform, because the way in which we allocate, I think education got the second highest figure, if I'm not mistaken.
I think
And
they're the highest.
it was either education or
Yeah,
health.
health was second. Health was second.
And when we continue to invest in education, we continue government after government, we continue in the billions, and in the, they get the highest, cut of the pie.
Mm-hmm.
We know that we're making an investment in our human capital to benefit, and that ROI, that return on investment, we shall see in the future.
Okay, so health got first and education second. Just
Education
double
second,
checking.
but it was like a point something.
Yeah, point something. So 7.51 billion was health, and education and training was 6.512.
Right. So with education, we need to reform the way that we introduce certain topics. So I know long ago that the ozone layer and depleting was a big thing, right? The big thing now is climate change. That's the big thing now, right? And so we need to start having conversations, because we see the irregular rainfall patterns in this country. We see areas in this country flooding. And as much as we want to cast blame on the government today, because here's the thing, should UNC win the next election, they would be in charge and the country will be blaming them as well for the flooding, right? I don't know. And that's where the rhetoric.
Well, as a wife of a contractor, we have solutions for flooding. So that one I'm not going to blame on climate change. We have solutions, and there's just no political will or something, because we have solutions for flooding.
But Marsha, I have to be fair.
No, because you can't say,
agree.
you cannot
I agree.
we know that rain going and fall heavy for 5 minutes. Deal with it. The Independence Square can't shut down every time rain fall for 5 minutes.
We are not home.
Listen, Cocorite, you just spent a set of money in Cocorite, and once rain fall heavy for 5 minutes, I had to wait a half an hour before I leave home, because I know it's gonna have a flood and we can't pass.
I'm not
have ways.
I am saying that we need to be responsible with rhetoric, because here's the thing, Marsha.
Well, yes.
While we blame the government, it have some corporations that not run by the government party that flood in the same way, and those drains who are responsible. So you see why we need to be responsible? You see why we are responsible? But I take it. Solutions. And as you saying, as I was telling Issa when you weren't here, we are a talented people, I think we have the answers amongst us. We don't need to contract.
But Chris, if you go, there is no international cooperation. There's no sphere in the world, on the global space, that's doing well. We are Trinidadian and a Tobagonian not involved in it. So of course we know that we have the talent here. We have a brain drain problem here, but we have the talent. We do.
I also would like to see from the Minister of Tourism, Culture and the Arts, and also Trade and Industry, the orange economy. We know that.
What is the orange economy? Because, well,
tourism, culture, and the arts.
Yeah. Okay, so good. I want to just make sure that we don't speak in a way where not everyone can understand. So we want to educate. We want to make sure when we say orange economy, this is what we mean. When we say blue economy, this is what we mean.
So we know that we had to heavily invest in fossil fuels because we saw it. We saw the results of it. We saw what would have been going on with the world at that time with fossil fuels, and we benefited from it. And that's where we would have gotten a number of subsidies. That's where we got gate for everything, grant for everything. But successive governments did not prepare or finance or plan enough or good enough well for when oil prices would fluctuate, or even production levels would have fluctuated. And so that's why we're in this issue right now. I think it's an oil curse. However, we need to diversify our revenue streams. And so when we speak about diversifying our revenue streams, we're looking at areas in which we can bring in that kind of forex and that revenue to this country, because we have a shortage of forex. Yeah, these small businesses complain about it all the time. You go to the bank, I think on the credit card now is what, 50 a day? It's 50 US a day?
It's ridiculous.
Anyways,
can you imagine? I mean, we try to run a company, and Richard would have to say, babe, hold on, don't shop on Shein just yet, because I have an order coming in.
Shein cheap. And Shein always has sale.
So it's like, well, maybe we could use your mom's card to bring something in for me, and we could figure it out. And because it's like, this is ridiculous. It's ridiculous.
So we have to develop a proper business model for Trinidad and Tobago. And we have a brand, Trinidad and Tobago. You know how I know we have a brand, Trinidad and Tobago? I think it's a little bit disorganized. We in Trinidad and Tobago tell the world what carnival looks like, what it sounds like, what it tastes like too, because we have our culinary artists out there as well. In every island in this country, if it's the Marshall song in Trinidad, it's the Marshall song in the islands. In Caribana, in Japan, in Hollywood. And how can we develop that business model? When we speak about our ambassadors, we have cultural ambassadors through artists, we have them through beauty pageants, we have them through sports. And so that's an area in which we need to capitalize on, because when they fly the red, white, and black, that is us being able to place our product, Trinidad and Tobago, on a global stage. We have a Miss Universe heading off to Miss Universe very soon, I think in a couple of weeks, if I'm not mistaken. How can we invest? We saw how well Ashley Abrahams did recently at Miss World. Did we capitalize? I think we did a good job in terms of communicating to Trinidad and Tobago that she was present there. Hats off to her organization and the media. But we can always do more. We want to improve. We're ambitious. We're ambitious people. So I'm looking
Yeah,
at
but
that.
Chris, this diversification and tourism, this conversation has been happening, just like I was telling Issa,
Since I
since before
small,
we born.
I grew up,
So
Issa, you want to
so
say something?
yeah. I look. I was completely dismayed by the budget, completely, and the reason is because the purpose of the budget, as Chris said, is to give us direction, and it offered none. All of the things that Chris is saying are the things that everybody in this country knows needs to happen. And we all look hopefully every year after year. We do the song and dance where we budget day and we listen to the minister, and all of us desperately hope that he will produce some of the leadership and direction to accomplish all of those things. And this budget in particular, if anybody felt that we were going in the correct direction, then they would be very happy with this budget. If anybody felt that we were going in a wrong direction and that intervention is necessary to secure the long-term economic viability of our society, then they would be totally dismayed, because this budget is simply a holding pattern, mark time. Practically nothing new was introduced. And my concern
I want
here,
to pause you two guys who have totally took over my show, and I love it. I love it because somebody said, Marsha, it seems you've been mentored well, that your talk show can run even when you are not there. So I want to say to my audience that kudos to my two guests. God had it that I planned these two guests perfectly, that they were able to host my show while I had to switch to my phone. But we do have my other guests, and y'all are welcome to stay if y'all can behave yourselves.
We can. I just have one more point I want to make
And let
before.
me at least just tell Dr. Indira Sijuan good afternoon and make sure that she is there and she's hearing and that she's willing to share her time with y'all. Doc, are you there? Okay, fine. Until she interrupts y'all.
I'm here. I'm here.
Okay,
Sorry.
you're here. So I'm going to let Chris answer Issa. I don't know if you heard Issa speaking about the budget, and he was saying he was totally disappointed. I'm not sure you heard his comment on the budget.
I just got the last comment, but let me just say, hey, Issa.
hi.
Lovely to be on a panel with you. Happy to share the space with these two young men. They're the next generation. My time's kind of, coming to an end.
No, not at all.
To hear what they have to say. I, like you, could just take a back seat and just listen to them, But I'll just make some attention.
Well, yeah, and we will chime in. They've totally taken over my show, just to give you some history of the show in terms of like this history. If you can't see me too centered and whatnot, is because somehow my laptop was giving trouble, and I had to go and find my phone and switch over and stuff. And so Issa was supposed to be gone since about 4:30. He stayed on and he decided to interview Chris It was a real comedy show. They personalities for days. So it's been really enjoyable, and they refuse to leave. So now they're taking over your spot as well.
That's
So
all right. I've spoken so much on the budget. I could listen. Chris, I'm not familiar with you. Hello, I am Indira Sajuan.
Dr. Sajuan, you are familiar with me.
Okay, so here is the thing, Chris. I'm not wearing my glasses. And
we,
I apologize for not putting my video
you
on.
would have you would have been on Critical Conversations a couple times, actually last year. Yeah.
Oh, of course. Absolutely. But you're just a blur that I'm not wearing my glasses. But of
But I
course,
also don't have on my glasses, so I probably look a little different as well. But my last point, and I will give way, right? My last point is that I think the agriculture sector, we speak about diversification, we speak about diversifying our revenues, we speak about wanting to lower the food import bill, and that's a sector in which I really was hoping would have gotten a higher allocation, because there we need to we have been speaking, how long we talking about that
But
lowering
Chris,
that.
I don't know. But Chris, I'm not sure that the issue is money, and this is where Doc, you could join in. But
Issues
you know,
with
I've
farmers,
well, yes. So I've had two sets of farmers on back to back, and it was before the budget. And you know, I mean, unless what I did not notice, and again, as you said, maybe these conversations need to happen later down when we have had the debates. But certainly inside of the budget speech, the minister would have listed different things that pests and this and education and whatever that affects the farmers. And what he did not list was land tenure. And I heard you mention it. And when you understand land tenure, so to break it down to the persons who do not understand and who may not have listened when we were there before. Oh my goodness, my phone is saying it's on 15%. Jeez Louise, me and technology today. If when you listen to it, and you understand that these people, 65% of producing farmers, cannot access these grants. They cannot access any of these incentives because they don't have land tenure. So until you address land tenure, you are going around in circles, you are wasting time. And it's the same thing, I think, with tourism. I saw you speak about Branch Trinidad and Tobago. Until you address crime, we are going around in circles. So there are some fundamental root issues that we could talk budget and we could talk figures from now till thy kingdom come. I want to quote from page 4 of the Focus on Trinidad and Tobago Budget 2025 from Ernst and Young. Let me quote. As we move forward, the task is not only to correct fiscal imbalances, but also to create an environment where economic resilience, public safety, and social welfare can thrive together. The minister attempted to tackle this balance within the current framework. He did not speak to challenging the status quo, including the government's role as the largest employer, public sector efficiency, rationalizing subsidies, and value for money. Additionally, he did not expand on measures aimed at enhancing ease of doing business and nurturing entrepreneurship. Given the current frame, our capacity to address the structural issues facing the economy will remain a significant hurdle. All in all, what they said, that until we change things, we spin in top in mud. Because, and I highlighted and then I underlined, he did not challenge the status quo. He attempted to do this whole hullabaloo with the current framework. And until the current framework is changed, we are going nowhere. Doc, you agree with me? Yes or no? Or do you agree with Ernst and Young? Yes or no?
Well, I mean, there's a lot you've talked about there that I can address. Let me start off by saying absolutely, we need the trajectory of growth in this country needs to be changed. It needed to be changed 20 years ago, and we're still talking the same thing. And we are just playing lip service to the issue of non-energy diversification and non-energy as we know it. I want to come back to the point that Chris was making in respect to agriculture. He's not wrong when he says that there's not sufficient money being allocated to the agriculture sector. You're also not wrong when you identify the issue of land tenure. Both points are very relevant points. If you're talking food security and you're talking about the importance of food, and if you understand what's happening in the world and you understand that what we suffered during COVID in terms of food shortage and inability to access basic food items is nothing compared to what is coming unless we position ourselves to ensure that we allow our agricultural sector to grow. Having said that, the allocation in the budget is 1.1 billion compared to 1.4 last year and less even in the years before. If you are serious about food production, you need to allocate at least $3 billion to food production, because you see about 90% of that money, almost $1 billion, is for recurrent expenditure. So when you remove that, there's very little money left for development. And land tenure is just one of the many issues and challenges facing farmers. Failure loss in the access to. I used to be on something called a prices council, where we interviewed almost all the farmers and made recommendations. Nothing was done. So basically, the government, and for 9 years, the government has been very good at speaking about the importance of food security, but has not been prepared to do anything about that. This year of tourism, and you're very right. Tourism is, and not just tourism, even agriculture, every sector, every individual in this country is challenged by crime. If you're a household, your cost of simply living is increased by that. You can't just put up a window, you have to put up a burglar proof. You can't just do that, you have to put cameras. You can't just do that, you have to put an electronic alarm system. That all of that costs money. Then you have to hire a firm in order to monitor. That is money that is taken away from you being able to buy books for your children, put food on the table. And we can take that same argument of small businesses to community groups at every level. Crime is a major bugbear to the issue of youth and development. Tourism, a major one, because tourism depends on persons coming from abroad. And we have advisories in all our major markets that are telling their people, don't come to Trinidad because of crime. All right. So I am on record for saying, we have to move beyond this love affair that we have with fossil fuel products, the oil and gas sector. It has served us really well. It will continue to serve us because it's not going to go away. And by all means, go after the dragon, go after new exploration, and try to, as best as you can, maximize while you can. Because we will come a time in the not so far off future where having fossil fuel is not going to be an advantage at all. It's already happening. Major markets are setting targets for themselves in terms of moving their demand for fuel away from fossil fuel towards renewable. China, for example, set a target for 2030 and reached that target long before that. China is leading the way with respect to the production of electric vehicles. Europe even gone way ahead. Europe has introduced what is called an import tax already, which means that any good that is produced anywhere in the world that uses fossil fuel is now subjected to an additional tax if the good has to go into Europe. So these are the realities that are facing us, and we have to position Trinidad and Tobago understanding and accepting this. Agriculture, again, growing agriculture is no longer the issues are no longer what they were 15 years ago, because now we have to factor in climate change, and we can't be doing open field break back agriculture. If you read some of the articles just before the budget, farmers are saying they lost thousands of dollars because of the heat that we suffered during a rainy season, because of the lack of water during a rainy season. And that is when it continue to worsen. Our crops are confused. They don't know when to bear because of climate change. And we can respond to that, right? Technology allows us to be able to respond to that. We have to get into different kinds of agriculture. We need to get into agriculture that is done within structures, hydroponics and all of these kinds of new type of agriculture is what we need to do. The same thing for tourism. The advice I would give 10, 15 years ago with respect to tourism is a different one now, because soon we will lose the advantage of sun, sand, and sea, because people don't want to go out in the sun, because that is not just crippling, but it is also causing health issues. Sea levels are rising, so we might be losing our waterfronts. That is one of our advantages. So as we talk tourism, we need to rethink how we position our tourism, community-based tourism, ecotourism, things that are more, based on our rainforest communities and our foods and all of these things are areas that we need to focus in on. I mean, I think I've said a mouthful, so I will just kind of stop here.
Oh, so I mean, you raised some really important points, but you know, I think Issa and I may be a bit jaded because
No, I
you
have
know
a question. I have a question.
we are probably going to get Sun, Sea, and Sand tourism correct when it's no longer advantageous to us. I'm gonna let Issa ask. Should I let Issa? Issa, you are like the new host of my show. Issa's been
I'm
asking
here.
my guests all the
I'm
questions,
here.
but I'm just gonna ask. I'm gonna take over for just a little bit. So, and
All
I'm
right.
not sure that it's a question, but you spoke about recurring expenditure, and again, to give context of the show, who we aim to reach is the average guy on the street, because Issa and I both seem to be on the same political education campaign. We need to get citizens more involved. So we have to make sure that we're speaking in a language that everyone can understand, even the guy who is not passing math right now. And we know that's about 40% of our young people, unfortunately. We the budget would have spoken about adult literacy programs. So we know that we have to, make sure that we're speaking in a language that everyone can understand, so that hopefully the interest is there and we can fight for better governance. Something, Issa would have started saying that at the end of the day, a political party's aim, their goal, their reason for being is to get in power and to stay in power. When you speak about recurring expenditure, I am not sure that the average citizen understands that part of the budget.
Sure.
It's so we talk about minimum wage, and then you hear that it's going to cost this the minimum wage will cost this measure will cost 75 million in fiscal year 2025, and then of course it will go on. Ernst and Young would have said, we have some pros, but really and truly, is this a sustainable measure? We're seeing that it's already putting pressure on the private sector. There's so much fallout, and then of course when I say it, then people jump on my back and say, so what, poor people mustn't live? And I said, well, maybe we should just focus on things like entrepreneurship, ease of doing business. Someone spoke last week about you could go to the bank for a carnival loan, you could go to the bank for vacation, but you can't go to the bank to set up a small business. So maybe there are other ways. But then you have pandering to your electorate saying, well, we go raise minimum wage and we go this and we go that. And is it really sustainable? Is it going to have a positive impact on the economy? So
Can I start? Yeah, so
yes.
you've raised a few things. Firstly, when we talk about recurrent expenditure, just to explain it to the man on the street. Like I was talking about agriculture, and I say most of the budget goes to recurrent expenditure. I mean, it goes to pay wages and salaries and buy chairs and tables and that kind of thing. That to just simply maintain the ministry. So that's money that you have to spend every year, money that is just dead. Well, not dead in the sense that, I mean, people earn a living from it and they look after their kids. So it is that is what we mean by recurrent expenditure, okay? And
But
what
it's
you need
certainly
to
not
grow a
development.
sector,
It doesn't
if
go
you,
to develop.
right, if you want to
Yeah.
grow a sector, you have to have money that's allocated to development. So we have to have money allocated to, for example, rehabilitating cocoa estates. That would be capital expenditure. Because then by the end of the year, if you say, okay, we're going to rehabilitate 5 cocoa estates this year, by next year we would have an increase in production. I should also say to you all, when we talk in agriculture contributes less than 1% to our GDP, to our gross domestic product. It means it is really not performing anywhere near where it should be, yet it generates more employment than the energy sector. Okay, the energy sector employs about 30,000 people. Agriculture employs more than that. The only thing is the level of the employment obviously is different. What people are paid in the energy sector is way, way, way more than you'll be paid if you're working in the agricultural sector. Okay, so that is something that you want to note. You raise the issue of the minimum wage that the government is now offering to public servants, and I want to backtrack a little bit and say that my overall comment on the minister's budget, which I didn't get the opportunity to do is that it's an election budget. The minister has really set up, he spent 4+ hours simply talking about, patting himself on the shoulder and his government's head, back on the shoulder in terms of what they've done over the last 9 years. But he cherry picked, he chose the things that he felt would appeal to the core, to the core voters. This measure of this 2%, this $2 really doesn't place people in terms of having a livable wage. It is still way below that. But to those persons who he has now given that to, they're happy to have that. It means the minister have identified us and he's recognized it and he's given us something. But there's a bigger issue. While it is only for public servants, so we're talking about CPEP, URP, daily paid workers who work on the minimum wage, what this does is it puts a strain on the private sector, on small businesses in particular, because it means now that everybody now who are working in the private sector for the older official for the $20 now want to work CPAP and URP because it means that they're going to be getting more money. So you're going to crowd out the labor, and that's a technical term. It means people will not be wanting to work in the private sector, but they will be looking for jobs in the CPAP URP program because that is where they're going to be getting a little bit extra money. Okay, so there are the implications for the measures that the minister has put into place. I hope I have addressed all of the issues. If there are any things I didn't, you let me know.
Very clearly. So I'm going to allow, we have just about 10 minutes left. I'm going to allow Issa to ask his question.
Oh, thank you so much. Thank you so much. Okay. So based on you just addressed really the short-term outlook in terms of being an election budget. I want to ask a question for those of us who are particularly interested in the long-term future of the economy. And you mentioned it quickly with the fossil fuel situation, the demand dropping over time. And I'm going to also add with the increase in production coming out of shale oil in the United States, natural gas in particular, there's going to be a lot of supply on the market. And there are a lot of experts saying that we could have peak demand within this decade for fossil fuels. So based on that, do you see, this is a sort of a two-paced thing, do you see that the way out for Trinidad and Tobago, what we really need to be focusing on now is developing a diversified private sector economy that could shoulder the entire burden of the economy away from oil and gas? And based on your expertise, do you think we have been doing the necessary to achieve that?
Well, the simple question is yes, that's exactly what we need to do. And if any of you all have been listening to me, you will know that I'm a broken record calling for diversification beyond oil and gas, because we always knew that this would happen. It's a non-renewable resource that we place all our eggs in that particular basket. This was always going to happen. Even if climate change wasn't happening, this was going to happen because we say we don't have the volumes. The last couple of years, the energy sector has contracted significantly. And it is the non-energy sector that is actually what is resulting in the small positive growth that we are seeing. Both production and volume of oil and natural gas have in fact been declining. If the dragon does come into play, I say the dragon does fly. So if in 2027 we do actually see that cross-border gas coming to Trinidad and Tobago, all that will do is maintain the current infrastructure, the current demand, the demand that existed in 2015, in 2010. That is the demand that will satisfy. There's no room on the basis of which to use that to expand. But as I say, climate change has simply exacerbated the situation. What you're saying is very correct. There's the anticipation that global supply of these fossil fuels is going to accelerate, and it will obviously accelerate. Everybody who has it will be looking to monetize it as rapidly as they possibly can because they know things are going to be changing rapidly. Your increased supply price is going to go down. Last year, the minister budgeted the assumption of his budget was on oil price of $85 per barrel and gas of $5 per MMBTU. In this budget, he has used $77.1 per barrel of oil and 3 point something for a MMBTU of gas. So that the budget has had to respond, 2024 has had, 2025 has had to respond to what happened in 2024. 2022 was a blip because we had the war in Ukraine, Russia that pushed the price of these commodities way high, and the result was that we had a lot of money coming into the country, not because we were producing more, but simply because you changed the price. To say it in simple language for you, so if today, if I have one bottle of soft drink and I am selling it today for $2 for one, but tomorrow suddenly there's no other soft drink anywhere in the world. It means, and everybody wants my soft drink, then I have the capacity to sell it for $10. The number of soft drink didn't change; it's still the one, but the amount of money I could now get for it is significantly more, and that's what happened for Trinidad and Tobago in 2022. In fact, we were actually producing less but earning more because of what happened with respect to price. We have no control over that. We depend on a sector over which we have very little control when it comes to the price. The prices are determined on the international market. So all of that having been said, I have been a rallying voice for economic diversification. Now, let me see. There is no sector that could replace the energy sector. The volumes of money that flows in because of that is phenomenal. However, we're a tiny island with 1.4 billion people, million, right? That's not a lot of people. And if we can substantially grow tourism, agriculture, non-energy manufacturing, we can expand into renewable energy, maritime service and yachting, agriculture, tourism alone have the capacity to generate significant foreign exchange. And you all haven't even mentioned the issue of the shortage of foreign exchange that we're suffering, right? And these are sectors that can generate foreign exchange. Let me use a simple example so you can understand. Let's take us St. Vincent and the Grenadines. The population, I think, is about 100,000 people. If so much, it might be even less. But there's no shortage of foreign exchange in this country, in that time, in that country, and it's because of tourism. Post-COVID, the Caribbean, and led by these islands, Barbados, St. Vincent, Grenada, St. Lucia, Antigua, Barbuda, led the world in terms of the recovery of the tourism sector. The rate of growth of tourism post-COVID in these islands were faster than the rest of the world. There are no foreign exchange crises in these countries. Even the taxi driver will refuse your US if it have a little kink or a little bend, because he's being paid in US dollars. When the cruise ship comes in and thousands of people come off it, he's paid in US dollars. So there's no shortage of it there. So tourism has that capacity. We can actually get it right. And Tobago is no less better than a Grenada. Yes, Grenada is way ahead of us when it comes to promoting and pushing tourism. And there are a lot of challenges. And I mean, I know we won't have time to deal with it. We could take each one of these topics and we could drill down and so that you could understand what are the advantages and what are the disadvantages, what are the bureaucratic challenges. So if we take tourism, for example, one of the major bureaucratic challenge is the issue of airlift. Post-COVID, that has even worsened for Trinidad and Tobago. Barbados, replaced us as a regional hub. All planes are going to Barbados. All the smaller islands now have direct flights from developed countries, where previously persons had to come to Trinidad and Tobago, then go to Grenada or any one of the islands. That's no longer the case. All of them now have direct flights coming in from their markets. We have lost that advantage. We don't even have enough flights to service ourselves. If you have to go Miami, if you want to pay a decent price, more likely than not, you have to go to as far as Houston and then come back down. So you have to fly for about 6 hours to Houston and then come back down to Miami. Miami is really 3.5 hours away if you have a direct flight. So we have lost that advantage because we managed COVID badly, very, very badly. We closed down our borders while Barbados was amazing. She did not, and she used the time in order to reposition her industry. She repositioned, for example, the cruise industry. Barbados is, post-COVID, is a home port. And for those of you who don't understand what a home port is, it means that's where the cruise starts. Traditionally, all the islands in the Caribbean, we were simply destinations, a place where a cruise would come in and spend a day, and then they leave. And we don't really get a lot of benefit from that because persons come off their cruise. But when you spend all your money on a cruise, you really don't want to spend any money on a destination because you have all your meals, everything prepared there. So the amount of money we get per cruise tourist is very, very small. And Trinidad, we get apparently one of the worst. But what Barbados did was negotiated with the cruise line to become a home port. And what that means is that persons, for example, coming in for the United Kingdom for a Caribbean cruise, they fly from the UK to Barbados. If their cruise is the next day or 2 days later, they spend 2 days, they stay in a hotel. They will take in the sights. So she's enjoying having those persons on her island, shopping, eating, renting a car, etc., for a couple of days. Then they go on their cruise and then they come back and they may spend a night and then they may take their flight. More than that, provisioning for the cruise ship then will take place from Barbados, which is another of itself. So, I'm giving you examples of what's happening right around us, okay? Right around us. To explain, I hope I'm doing a decent job to explain to you
Very
how
good.
we need to do, how we need to repair. Isa, I hope I answered your question. We could talk about yachting. There's so many things we could talk about, but time.
I think I could listen to you speak for hours about this, but I have to give Marsha back her shows. So
Well, you don't really have to give me back my show. We have to give back Power 102 and all the different platforms, the flow channels and whatnot. You have to give them back their airtime now. Because it's now 5:59. So by the time I say bye, Issa, bye, Chris, we ask Chris where he gone. Chris like he disappear. By the time I say,
Can I just say something? I mean,
yes,
it's
of
very
course.
heartening to see you young people on platforms doing this. So hats off to you on that crime symposium. I have been talking about it in the public space. I've been lamenting the fact that enough people didn't come out. But it is really good to see your generation stepping up and understanding that you have a significant role to play in the development of this country and in terms of holding those who govern us to account. So, really, really proud of you guys. If that means anything, and happy to see this happening.
No, well, I told
Thank
Issa
you
the
for
same
support.
thing. I told them that I was super happy because unfortunately, fortunately, whichever, I represented UNC in the 2020 general election. So you're painted as a politician or UNC rather than, well, I'm a citizen who's interested and I chose one vehicle to try to get change. So it was what I saw was, yes, finally someone that is non-partisan, independent voice. Because I kept saying to people, persons were saying, what's the opposition doing? I said, well, really and truly, I don't think that this movement should come from the opposition. I think for it to really have any kind of power, it has to come from an independent space. So when I saw this, I said, yes, this is what the country needs. And then Chris spoke about young people not we're not interested in blind loyalty to any political party. We want to hear politicians who, if even if you're UNC, you can say, look, I'm going to hold you to account as well. I'm going to hold PNM to account. It is simply about accountability. There's no blind loyalty. There's no favoritism and cult behavior. That is where Chris, Chris just came from Youth Parliament, so he was bringing back report to us, and he was saying that's what young people want. It's a different generation, and they're not interested in blind politics. So I really, congratulated Issa at the beginning of the show because I did think that he hit the nail on the head, being an independent voice, giving that space. And I really hope that more citizens, I was giving him the stats, just coming out of being in an election and understanding the non-voter versus the voter and whatnot, the bases and stuff. And I said, there is a space. The number of persons who they don't want to take membership in any party, but they want to be involved. So there definitely is a space. And, I join with Dr. Congratulate you on taking up that space.
Well,
So
thank
guys,
you all so much. I'm just glad to be out there helping people find their voices back.
and I do hope that you are safe. That's something that is real. But hopefully more and more and more of us, they can't lock us all up, they can't kill us all. And if we do it loud enough, maybe then they'll realize they can't. But God is good; He'll protect us. We have to do what we have to do without the fear of victimization, and hopefully other citizens will be inspired by it to to step up, to speak, and God will take care of the rest. So guys, it's way past 6 o'clock now. Thank you all very much for taking time out to keep this conversation alive, and hopefully our conversations on a national level can become more mature and not about small pin and bobby head and all kind of shippiness. So bye guys. Chris, are you gonna come and say bye? I saw you popped in your head, your glorious head. Yeah. Bye.
All right, take care, everyone.
Okay, thank you so much, Marsha. That was Hard Talk with Marsha Walker and her special guests, Isa Mohammed, Chris Hussein, and Indira Sajiwan Ali. Marsha will be back next Thursday for another edition of Hard Talk right here on Power 102 Digital.